Welcome to Free Advice Friday. My name is Keri Barnum for New Shelves Books, and we are here to talk about the business of being an author, publishing, marketing, and everything in between. We meet every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern, and you can join us live by going to newshelves.com/FAF for Free Advice Friday. You can also email in your questions. So if you can't join us live, you can go to info@newshelves.com, send in your questions, we answer those, and then you can catch the replays later on YouTube. So we've got some emailed in questions, we've got some live questions, and we're going to jump in and start answering them. Let's see. To make it seem less intimidating and overwhelming, would you break down the important pieces to include in a story synopsis? That's a really good question. So your story synopsis will kind of depend on what you're using it for. So if you're using it, let's say, to query, then you really want to go a little bit more into some of the details. Sometimes someone will say, give me a synopsis, give me all the spoilers. I don't need anything held back. And sometimes you're doing a synopsis for other purposes, for an interview or something where you don't want to give everything away. So keep that in mind. How much detail you will give depends on where you're using the synopsis. But the things that we really need to think about is first, we kind of need your log line. We need a quick one-line hook summary of what your book is about. And from there, then we need an introduction to your characters. We need to know kind of the arc, the inciting incident, why we care, what are we in for? And then we need to then have kind of what we're working towards. If this is for, let's say, an agent, you're probably going to actually tell them like what the ending is. If this is for an interview or something, you're going to hint at it. So you can see how it'll be a little bit different. But really, that's the best way to think of a synopsis is we've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. And where are we going with it? We want to kind of bring people on that arc with us because that's how a good book does, right? It starts at the beginning. We're introducing characters and the inciting incident. We get here to the main drama or action, and then we kind of go down. Now, if this is a synopsis for, let's say, a nonfiction book, not memoir, because memoir usually works pretty close to the same way as fiction for that. But if we are talking about a nonfiction book, then it's a little bit different because that's usually a little bit more linear. We're kind of going to be introducing what the book's about, and then we almost have like a chapter by chapter summary of what people will be learning, what they'll be seeing, that kind of thing. So it is very different in that respect. Um, but hopefully that gives you kind of a better idea. Like sometimes it's even easier. What I do sometimes is I'll literally take either chapter by chapter. I'm just going to, for myself, do a quick chapter by chapter summary. And then I'm going to kind of piece those together into like a mini story. And also, if that doesn't work for you, think of it as let me describe the beginning, the middle, the end, and then put those together kind of in a succinct way. And then look at the beginning, look at what your hook is, what your genre is, and then being really clear. So people should know really almost in that first instant, in that first hook, they should know what kind of book they're getting themselves into, whether it's a business book or a memoir or a rom-com or a mystery. There are some really big tells for that kind of thing that either build mystery or suspense or romance. And so think about that you need to introduce that very, very quickly. We should not get to the end of your synopsis and then go, oh, it's a suspense, or oh, this is a true story. Many times, especially I notice this in memoir, many times people want to fictionalize or sensationalize it because it sounds more exciting. It's very confusing to someone that you're pitching or a reader when it almost reads like fiction, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, by the way, this is my true story." It's not that you can't have some of those elements or action, but tell us what we're getting before we get into it. Let's see. I've watched a few of our past webinars and have a good idea now what SEO is all about. So SEO, for those of you who don't know, it's just search engine optimization. And that is pretty much everything online in our world works off of. you know. Amazon works off of algorithms in SEO within the Amazon stratosphere. Your website works off of SEO. Can people in a search engine, typically Google, can they find you? So search engine optimization is really just about using the right metadata, the right keywords, and positioning yourself well so people can find you easier. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about optimizing Amazon. It's essentially SEO optimization just specific to Amazon. Google's blogs, even social media has SEO in it. If someone is typing in, you know, I don't know, a group for writing, what group are they going to find first? If I type in mystery writers, am I going to find Mystery Writers of America, or am I going to find, Thriller Fest or something like that? And that's kind of SEO within a social media platform. So, in a world where so much of what we do is online, it is the practice of really making sure that you can be found easily and that you're connecting to the right people with your metadata and your keywords so that it's actually like, you're able to be found. So that's kind of the most basic version of SEO there. All right, let's see. A question or clarity about Facebook author pages. I decided to set up a Facebook author page rather than just posting about my books on my personal page. I titled it Pat Dana Author, but after listening to a webinar by Josh Becker, he recommended not using your name, um, but instead finding something like Kidlit Author. I have not heard this webinar, and I haven't heard the reasoning behind it, so I could change my mind with that. However, I don't typically agree. I think that very often there used to be something called a passion page that people talked a lot about, where an author would have their author page, which is really just them and their books, but then they'd have something called a passion page. And a passion page was something like that, kidlet author or romance books for women or something like that. So that the SEO or the searchability when they're searching in broad categories would bring them to a page that heavily featured your books, or a group of authors will sometimes do a passion page together, like 10 authors in the same genre will kind of all post because it gives them more exposure that way. And it also kind of feels like a third party um, page that's talking about them and their books more often, which can help with algorithms and things like that. So there are times to do that. However, I think that if you are building your name and your brand, it's really important for your name and your brand to show up. So if it were me branding myself as an author, I would be doing it under my own name. You even said here, that's good for famous authors with name recognition. The thing is that we want your name to be recognized. And if we don't brand with your name, it's not going to be. So that is one of the things that you kind of have to think about is maybe you're not famous yet, but if you want to brand your name, if you want to rise to the level of famous people, we kind of have to take a note from them and how they do it and what they do it. It's kind of like dress for the job you want. Well, create the social media name for the presence that you want, in my opinion. Again, I've not heard the full talk from Josh Becker or the reasoning behind it, so I'm open to having my mind changed. But as of now, that's where I stand. See. In fiction, do readers like shorter chapters, even if a novel has 50 plus, or will they read a book with long chapters of 12 to 15 pages and fewer, or of 12 to 15 pages and fewer chapters? Doesn't matter. So, a question of longer versus shorter chapters. And this is a really interesting topic that I've heard talked about more and more recently. So, what we're finding is that in nonfiction, self help, business, and inspirational even. We are finding that short chapters are the way to go, that people want bite-sized chunks of information that they can kind of walk away from or take a break from. So in those categories, short chapters for sure. If you are in a genre that can move quickly, short chapters are trending. So if you're in suspense and thriller, short chapters. If you are in contemporary romance or rom-com, those tend to go more towards short chapters. Where do long chapters come in? Longer chapters tend to come in historical fiction, literary fiction, something where the scene maybe takes longer to build and would be harder to cut off. In suspense and things like that, having those short chapters that are almost like mini cliffhangers are a good way to build suspense. But if you've got historical fiction and it takes, I don't know, 2 pages to describe the scene and the characters, and then you didn't even get to, like, the dialogue, it's not gonna work. Now, I do wanna say that I have seen the shorter chapters creep up in, like, historical romance where it's more focused on the romance than the history, but there are just certain types of writing that don't really trend towards those, short chapters. So I would say if you're not sure, go somewhere in the middle. It can be a long chapter can really be hard for a reader to not just keep engaged or attention spans are getting shorter and shorter, but it can just be a lot of details all at once. But the very short chapters, mostly we're seeing in nonfiction and we're seeing them in suspense and thriller. As far as a memoir, I would go on the shorter side. Remember, it's any type of nonfiction that's kind of storytelling, and also memoir tends to tends to go by almost like mini stories oftentimes. So you're kind of keeping it in there. I would say go towards shorter or medium length. Don't go to long length in memoir, in my opinion. Yeah, and it depends. I have read some really long chapters, and I have to say that, like, even if I keep reading chapter after chapter, I like knowing that I can stop if I want to without stopping in the middle of a chapter. So, but it's definitely changing based on our attention spans and different things that are going out there. Let's see. I'm finalizing my business book featuring a selection of 100 selected small businesses with an expert council evaluating them. How bad is it to have no forward section? I don't think it's bad not to have a forward section. I think a forward section is a fantastic opportunity to ask someone with name recognition, either in the business or as an author, to write a very short forward. If you know someone or feel like you can connect to someone in that way, I think it's a great opportunity. But I don't think it's bad to not have a forward. In fact, a lot of books, nonfiction books in particular, a lot of nonfiction books don't start with a forward in their first edition. It's really interesting that many of them don't have a forward in their first edition. And then what happens is that as the book gains popularity in a second edition, a forward will often be added. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but I do think it's a great opportunity if there is someone in the industry that would elevate the book by having their name associated with it. They get their name kind of in the book, and you get their credibility, whether they be in the specific business or niche you're writing about, or they are an author that, has some kind of clout somehow in that genre. I wouldn't stress about it though. For unsolicited manuscripts, if you can find staff names, should you address the book submissions to the senior editor or the associate editor? First, I would make sure that that company, that agent, whoever it is, publisher, accepts unsolicited manuscripts. Um, because I've said this before, when agents and publishers put out requirements, many times it's like a test. And if you are sending out unsolicited manuscripts and you haven't met someone in person, or you're just not reading their rules, a lot of times they don't, like, not only are you in the no pile, they're like, this person can't listen. So I would make sure first that they accept unsolicited manuscripts, and if they do, typically they will have some type of direction on who to send into. From there, I mean, as far as editor or a senior editor or associate editor, I think it's really up to you. I would try to research what projects each of them have worked on and try to make sure that you're sending your work to whoever has the most experience in that specific niche. But be very careful that you are looking for and reading any guidelines that might be posted. Let's see. I write and self-publish scene and monologue books for actors. If I want to reprint monologues from some of my earlier books, will that be an issue when uploading the new book to Amazon and Ingram? I believe I've seen verbiage like monologue XYZ was originally published in a slightly different form in monologue title on the copyright page. So that's funny. I answered a question about this in a Facebook group not 20 minutes ago. Well, I guess it's 10:20 now, maybe 30 minutes. That's a very good question. If you are using, let's say there's one monologue in a book of 50, I think that you're fine to repost it and not worry about it. If, however, you have a book of 50 monologues and 25 of them are, then you would need to kind of put that in there. Typically, it would go, you can put it on the copyright page, but you might also want to put it on the individual, like as you have it separated out by monologues, you might want to note it there. And Amazon does require that if you are republishing the majority of content from another book, it's required that you put that in your actual book description on Amazon. So at the bottom of the book description, it would say, um, 20 or several half of the monologues have been previously published under this book title. So you would have to disclaim it there. So it depends on how much of it you're reusing. Also, the question is if you're reprinting these monologues, is the other book still available? Is it been taken down and not available anymore? So there are some details that, go into it. And is it for the same audience? Did you take a monologue? Let's say you took a monologue for adult acting and it was in one of your books, and now you have this book that's monologue for, I don't know, monologues for auditioning to be a doctor, and one of those happens to cross over. Chances of people buying both those books and being confused or upset that they've kind of paid for the same thing twice are pretty low. So those are things to keep in mind too. But it's all about making sure that there's a good user experience, not just for places like Amazon, but making sure that if someone bought your book already, that they're not going to buy another book and then give you a bad review because they're like, this is all reprinted from something I already bought. So we want to avoid customer confusion and make sure that they've got as good of an experience as possible. All right, let's move to an emailed question because we had a couple. Oh, yes. A question about Audible virtual voice came in this week. So someone said, I've been playing around with the, not Audible, I apologize, KDP. I've been playing around with the KDP virtual voice, which is the beta program that's currently available in some KDP accounts for turning your book into an audiobook with AI narration. They said, so far, scary good and scary easy. Any hiccups or caveats based on, using this program? So the things that we have to think about is, I've said this before. Yes, KDP Virtual Voice, I used it in its very first iteration and it was good then. And I've used it more recently in a client's account where it's got some more of those upgrades in it. And it is scary good and it is scary easy. I was able to create a audiobook um, from the KDP Virtual Voice, so AI audiobook narration. I was able to create that in less than 5 minutes. This book in particular was fantasy, so it did have a lot of different names and places that I did have to go through and adjust the what's the word I'm talking about, the um pronunciation. There we go. I can think of words. I did have to go through and change the pronunciation, but you can do that. You can take, like, for example, there's a name that they were saying incorrectly. So I highlighted the name and then I spelt it out phonetically. I listened to it to like see if it actually sounded correct. It did. And then I was able to replace all and it changed it in the entire book. In the new virtual voice, you can actually change from chapter to chapter. You can change the narrator. So if you want a dual POV book, you can change the narrator from male to female or something like that. It's got a lot of tools, and the narration, the options they have are getting better and better. So these are the things. It is getting scary good. It is available in a lot of accounts. I do think it'll be widespread soon. But the things to think about, just as kind of caveats, is that a KDP virtual voice book currently only sells on Audible. It doesn't sell anywhere else. It's only available on Audible. It is free to make. It will only sell on Audible. There will be a note on the listing that it was created with virtual voice, which is AI. So there is a note on there for the consumer. Um, when you're doing this, just keep in mind that if you're hoping to sell those audio rights, if you're hoping to, sell your sub rights or something like that, don't do this. It will hurt your chances of selling sub rights, and you definitely don't want to do that. If you know it's just something that you're not ever really going to pursue, or the book is maybe not selling that well, but you wanted to make it accessible, that's fine. But if you think that you might be able to sell your sub rights later, you don't want to do a virtual voice or AI voice audiobook. The other thing is to keep your price really low. While people are listening to the AI narrated audiobooks, the expectation is that they're going to cost less than human narrated audiobooks. So most of the time with KDP virtual voice, we're seeing books priced between $3.99 and $9.99, usually on the lower end. More like an ebook almost. So keep that in mind. But the biggest thing that I want you to know and take away with is that if your book is in Kindle Unlimited and you're using KDP Virtual Voice, they consider KDP Virtual Voice a part of Kindle Unlimited. So if you create a virtual voice book and your book's in Kindle Unlimited, your audiobook is immediately connected and free through kind of the Kindle Unlimited programming. So you still get paid for it. That's not what I'm saying, but it's connected and the terms are connected. So here's the big kicker. If you use the KDP Virtual Voice, then what happens is that audiobook, number one, you can't use a virtual voice audiobook anywhere outside of Amazon and Audible. So you can't download that file and put it on YouTube or use it elsewhere. It is exclusive. You only have permissions to use it directly on Amazon. But the big kicker here is if your book is in Kindle Unlimited and you do a KDP virtual voice, you are agreeing that the audiobook will be exclusive to Amazon and Audible, not just that version of the audiobook, any version of an audiobook. So, for example, you cannot use KDP Virtual Voice and create the audiobook on Audible and then go and use 11 Labs for Spotify or for YouTube. It is against the terms of service because you are held to the Kindle Unlimited terms for your audiobook when you create KDP Virtual Voice. So really, really pay attention to that because that does mean that you are limited just to Amazon if you use that tool. So for some people in books, again, that's just fine. But I think it's really important to be aware that if you're in Kindle Unlimited and you use virtual voice, your audiobook in any form, you can't have a human narrator narrating on other platforms and using KDP virtual voice on Audible. That is against the terms of service. So this is only Kindle Unlimited. If your book is not exclusive to Amazon, it's not in Kindle Select or Kindle Unlimited, and you use virtual voice, you can still do human narration or other AI narration on other platforms. But that is a really, really big thing that is kind of slipped in there. And I don't think a lot of people realize. So just make sure you know what you're getting into and what the terms of service are. Those are my biggest kind of takeaways from it. And I will say um, I've listened to these audiobooks and they're actually pretty good and they can be used pretty well. I haven't really seen anyone, um, I've not really seen anyone making a ton of money off of them yet. I think that most people still prefer human narration. But I've seen some people make some money on it. Some people I've seen do it just so that the book is more accessible. Different things like that. So for what it's worth, that's my 2 cents on it. The audiobook resources. So the KDP virtual voice is just through the KDP platform when you're logged in there. Um, and if you're looking for something more specific, let me know and I'll try to answer that for you. Let's see. And then we had a question here. Yes, Apple also offers a form of AI narration. Spotify has just introduced AI narration. There's a lot of AI narration tools that are coming out. Mostly they're specific to each platform at the moment, but yes, there's a lot of them that are coming out. Let's see, this is the first time I've heard about the author page. Right now, I have many followers on my personal Facebook page. Would I be duplicating my efforts by doing an author page? And that is one of the things we get asked a lot is why would I, if I've got a following on my personal page, why would I make an author page? That is a good question. And the answer, there's two big reasons why, even if you have a personal Facebook, you would be making an author page. Number one, your personal Facebook is private. It can only reach so many people based on your connections, and it tends to have some level of privacy on it. A author page is a business page that's publicly accessible. Think of it more like a website. So it means that anyone can find it, see it, interact. They don't have to personally know you or send you a friend request and be approved. So there's more accessibility for SEO, which we were talking about, and also just so people can find you and find your books publicly online. The other really big reason is you need a business page to run ads, and Facebook ads are one of the best ways to get your book out into a book audience. And so Facebook ads are huge, and you have to have a business page for that. And so those are two really big reasons. And also, and here's a third reason that I don't think we talk about enough. Um, Most of the time, no, I don't know about most of the time. Just 1 minute. Excuse me. Well, we're in a hotel and we just had some very nice person try to come in and I don't know, they're not even supposed to do room service today. I don't know why they're in here. Sorry, you guys. Life on the road, am I right? My daughter, by the way, is right over there reading, so now we're laughing at each other. Um, Back to where I was, Facebook pages. Okay, so if you are on a Facebook page, we don't talk enough about the fact that with the Facebook page, most of the time people get Facebook because it's personal, because we want to personally um, connect with people. We're sending pictures, updates, whatever it is. And then someone starts some type of business. For you, it's being an author, it's your book. And think about that from where someone is personally connecting with you. And then suddenly it feels like you're just constantly posting about your business, and they're not really there for that. They don't really care about your book in the sense that maybe you have children's books and they don't have kids or grandkids, and they're not really interested in that. So then they stop connecting with you. I think in some ways, having a business page is a way to respect our connections who maybe don't want our product. Just like if you're selling Tupperware or if you're a contractor or whatever it is, it's separating your work life and your business life a little bit. So, this is one of the reasons why I recommend having a business page, because with a business page, it gives us the opportunity to invite people to say, hey, I've done this business, I've done this book. I'd love for you to follow me on my journey. Here is that link. And you give them the opportunity. But it means that you keep your business, your authorship, your books on your business page, and you keep your personal page more personal for personal updates and things like that. Now, what I usually recommend is that we always post business stuff to our business page first. But if we have a big update, a big win, something we really want to share, then we share the post from our business page, we share it to our personal page, and we tell someone personally why we care. We posted to our business page about a book award, and then we share and say, I don't share about my book all that often, but I just wanted to, share in the joy of this award that I won. It's been a really big, hard road, and I'm very excited about it. So you're changing it from this kind of like general thing to a personal story. And that way you're able to do a little bit of both. But that is one of the things that I think we really have to consider is way too often. And I don't like when people I know, all they post about is their business. I'm not there for that when I'm scrolling on certain things. Now, if they give me an opportunity to follow them, sometimes I will if I think I'll use their services or just because I want to support them, whatever it is. But I like having the choice, and I think a lot of other people do. So, and not only that, but there's this thing called a snooze button. And believe me, if you're constantly only posting about your book or your product, people are using the snooze button, and then you're not able to connect. So we want to protect and respect our relationships personally, and a author page, a business page, can help us do that. So that's one of the reasons to do that. What are your suggestions for what to post on an author business page besides my books? I have an 80-20 rule. So 80% of the content you post should be interesting, funny, relevant to your general genre or trope or your audience. And 20% should be about you and your products. Now, that doesn't mean that it all has to be like general and not personal. You can share a meme. Let's say you write mysteries. You can share mystery memes and just share it because that's interesting to other authors and readers in your genre. You can share quotes, you can share articles if there are articles about readers. I mean, New Shelves does a lot of this. We share a lot of articles about the industry because that's what we're in it for. And then we post about things like Free Advice Friday, or if we're running a certain program, or I'm speaking somewhere. But it's got to be balanced, just like it would be if you were going into you're going into a cocktail party. You would probably go in and say, hey, my name's Keri. What's your name? What do you do? Oh, yeah, I do this. And it's a conversation back and forth. You would not stand on a table and start shouting, my name's Keri, and I wrote a book. I wrote a book. You want to know about my book? I'll tell you about my book. Why? Because that's obnoxious. And the truth is that we have to be careful on social media to remember that there are real people behind the screen we're posting to. And the more we have conversations, the more we build relationships. The more we build relationships, the more we have long-term readers. It is just one of those things that we have to think about while we're using social media for marketing purposes. There has to be some balance of interaction and communication and friendship and community that goes along with that promotion, because otherwise people are not going to follow and interact with you. So think about who your reader is and what they might be interested in. If you are, and yeah, we're gonna kind of profile people based on if you, I don't know, if you read cozy mysteries, I'm going to guess you probably like animals. It's a good guess. Cats, dogs, you probably like one of them. So cute animal videos are going to be a win. If you are a cozy mystery reader, chances are you like to do some type of crafting or baking. Um, you probably are of a certain age range. You're probably, so I'm going to post things about that. You're probably going to like certain memes better than others. You're probably going to identify with certain quotes more than others. And so we're going to lean into who our audience is and really identifying with them. And that's how we post to social media in a way that is balanced. And then why people care when we say, oh, yeah, by the way, all of my friends, I have a book coming out. And that's when they care and care to interact more that way. Let's see. Moving on. There was another question here. Here we go. There's a question here about really the difference between marketing and PR specifically. how they cross over, how they're different, and what sells more books. Because that's what we all really care about, right? And I think there's this misconception about marketing and PR um, that's really important. Is PR for the most part, public relations is about awareness. It's making it so people recognize you, your name, your book. It is creating awareness for a person or a product. Marketing is asking for a sale, and that's the difference. And ideally, they go hand in hand. We create the awareness. We create the awareness of the book title and the name and the project so that when I then send an ad out online and you happen to see it, you go, oh, that's the person who was on this podcast. And you're more likely to click and convert to a buyer. Or they see your book on a store shelf and they are more likely to buy it. But PR in its own right doesn't typically sell things, which is kind of crazy. It creates interest, but not the sale. Whereas marketing is more focused on asking for a sale through advertising, through list building, through the actions of working towards a sale, whether that be creating an audience funnel, actually running an ad to a sales product page, whatever it may be. And so ideally they work hand in hand. I often say that what New Shelves does is where PR and marketing meet because there does need to be some crossover, but they are different. So for example, I've met authors who have been on Good Morning America. Good Morning America is a huge program. And you might think, wow, they went on Good Morning America. They must have sold so many books. They sold three copies of their book. And I'm pretty sure that was like the entire day that that thing aired. Um, because what had happened is that was PR and awareness was created for them and their name. And if an ad had followed up and someone had seen that ad, they might go, "Oh yeah, that's that person from Good Morning America. Let me look further." But people are not directly led to their product page. They were not directly asked to go buy a product. And so they didn't. So that's one of the things that we have to think about with PR and marketing. And they both have value in their own right. But I will tell you that most authors want sales and they're more focused on that than they are the awareness aspect. And so you have to ask yourself if you're working with a PR company or a marketing company, what are you trying to get out of this? So one of the first thing I ask potential clients is, what do you hope your book will do? Are you trying to make a bestseller list? Do you have a certain number of copies in mind? Are you trying to build a career? Because what you do from there changes it. Like not every plan is the same. And PR, public relations companies, usually charge a lot of money. A normal PR package will cost anywhere from $2,000 to $15,000 per month, depending on how much they're doing for you, how many pitches. And it's not guaranteed that anyone will interview you or anyone will pick you up. It's dependent on their connections, it's dependent on your product, your pitch, how you present socially, and all of those different things. But $2,000 to $15,000 per month. Do you know how many ads we can run for $2,000 to $15,000 per month? And how many book sales you'd probably get, even if you didn't break even, how many more book sales you'd have? A lot, a lot, a lot. So I think that's one of the things we have to consider is PR. You're not necessarily being paid back in book sales. You're being paid back in other ways like brand awareness and name recognition, kind of credentials that you can put on your resume or your bio. Whereas marketing, you're usually paid more back in sales. And so there is ROI for both of them, return on investment, but that depends on what kind of ROI you're looking for and what you need. Yeah. Yeah. It's people always, it always blows me away when people are like, yeah, I was on the show and I sold no books. It's so, so common. I cannot stress this. If you're like, man, I was on my local radio show and I only sold a book, Good Morning American, 3 books. It's not unusual. So it's one of the things to kind of consider. And this is also why there's been this movement to, rather than these big media outlets, really finding the niche audience that are more aligned with your book and your genre and what you sell And then really targeting that. So smaller podcasts. If you have a true crime book, true crime podcast, go to the niche places where they've already built the market. And that's more likely to get you sales than going onto a huge platform that's not necessarily your ideal reader. It's a little bit of a different way to look at it, but I think that it's an important and valuable thing to think about. Let's see. I think we got that one. All right, this one's a little bit different. Actually, AI is coming up again. No one's surprised. AI has been all over publishing lately. So I'm sure, I don't remember if we talked about it last week. I'm sure that you all have heard about the journalist who generated a summer reads list with AI, did not fact check it, did not look it over, really nothing. Put it out. It was carried in two big papers. And of the books, 9 of the 15 were fake. Real authors, not real books. AI did him dirty, but that guy did not check. He didn't fact check. He didn't do his work and he didn't fact check. And he's publicly said that. And obviously a lot of embarrassment. And this person probably will not be working in journalism anymore because that's a big boo-boo. On the heels of that came a author who released a book, and within their book, they accidentally left an AI prompt asking the AI to write for them. So not did they only use AI in their book, but then they left the prompt in there because they did not carefully read. They didn't carefully proofread. And so once again, we are proving that it's important to have AI policies in place. It is important to know when and how to use it. I mean, you eventually, I think we all have to decide for ourselves what's ethical and what's not. I think there's a lot of differing opinions. But yes, this person actually left an AI prompt in their novel. And the question is, how do we treat that as readers? Who cares? Who doesn't care? Because guess what? There are a lot of readers who are like, I don't really care. It was a good story. I had fun reading it. And there were some that were outraged. Obviously, the writing community at large was outraged. But these are the things that are creeping up in our business now. These questions are coming up. And so once again, I'll say that if you choose to use AI, just make sure that you are using it smart, that you are the human running it, not allowing it to just run, because that's really, really important, is that if you're going to use it, make sure that you are using it as a tool and you're not using it as a cheat, because these things will happen and it might ruin your career. Um, it's just one of those things. Just one of those things. But along with that, I have been getting an increased number of people sending me messages that they are receiving. So messages that they are receiving offering marketing services or PR services or all sorts of things. And these people will tell me, usually I delete these as scams. I didn't reach out to this person, it was unsolicited, but this seems like they really read my book. It seems like they did a lot of research. It seems like they must be legitimate if they took this much time to come up with a pitch angle for me in my books. Um, I am afraid that most of the time when someone reaches out to you and they say they want to review your book for $50, or they're sending you a marketing program unsolicited and asking you to pay money for it, and it sounds really good, but completely unsolicited, they've never talked to you. Most of the time, these people are using AI. They are literally seeing you. A lot of times they'll see that you're running ads somewhere on Amazon or Facebook or somewhere. They'll see that you are actively marketing your book. Sometimes they literally just go randomly on to social media or onto Amazon and look up books. And what they're doing is they're going into AI. They are pulling your book description from there, or pulling your reviews in your book description, and they are plugging it in to AI and saying, create a PR proposal for this author and this book um, that is for this description with these reviews. Make it sound personal, like I've read the book, done deep research, and lay out a plan. And it's doing just that. So then people are going, oh, well, they were talking about my book. They must have read it. No, no, no. They had AI take your reviews, which usually tell more in-depth detail about your book than your description. And then they're using that to create a really, really good plan. These are still the old scams and spams that have been around for a really, really long time. So I'm going to repeat the advice that I've had for ages. If they reach out to you first, be very, very wary. If you did not sign up for their newsletter, if you did not reach out to them to schedule a call, if you haven't had a personal recommendation, be so careful, you guys. These cold emails, I'm not saying it never happens. I'm not saying an agent never reaches out to an author and says, I love your book. I want to sell your subrights. I've personally known this to happen. Or, I think your book would be good for a movie. I have personally known this to happen, but it is so incredibly rare. Do your homework. If these emails are coming from a general like Gmail, Hotmail, Outlook email, probably no dice. If it's coming from a personalized URL, look up that URL in that business. Look up the name and title, look up the company they use, and try to find everything you can on it. In fact, most of the time, if it is coming from um, an actual company name, I will reach out to the company from the contact form. This happened just recently. I knew it was a scam, but I got an email just recently that was a cease and desist letter saying that it was from a law office. It was a cease and desist letter for something that I knew was a scam because it wasn't accurate. Um, but it looked really good. And they wanted me to click on a link and give them my information. So I wasn't sued is what they use the fear tactic there. It was a legitimate law firm. It was a very, very good letter. Um, I knew it was wrong because I knew, again, there was a detail in there that I was like, absolutely not. Also, I knew I hadn't done it, but anyway. So between those things, I researched, I looked up the law office, and I reached out to them directly and said, I just want you to know that people are sending these emails with your name, your logo, your information. The original email was from a Gmail account. Number one, a law office is not going to use a Gmail. Um, but it's one of those things that you really, really have to think about and be careful of that. AI is making it a lot easier for people to scam. And I mean, scammers have been around for a long time, but now it's making them more convincing because I can go on to ChatGPT and say, in the tone of a law office, write a cease and desist letter for this to this person, and it will do it. And it will sound more convincing than if I just tried to pretend like I'm a lawyer. Um, it is making it much easier. So we do have to just be more and more careful of these scams. Definitely check the company list. Ask for books they've worked with. Also, I've noticed a lot of like scammy companies, when you ask for books they've worked with, they will list major books and major authors, and you're like, you did not work with these people. This is false. But these are the things to look at for sure. And again, if you didn't reach out to them first, be so wary. If they called you out of the blue, they got your number from a list, be very wary. If you did not sign up for their newsletter, their webinar, their whatever it is, be wary. Because when you reach out first, you started that communication. And that immediately builds some trust when they respond back to you. But if it's something where you didn't personally reach out and they're just cold calling or cold emailing you, be very, very wary. Um, it's just they're getting really good at it, you guys. So keep that in mind. All right. I think that was all of the questions I had for today. Yeah, they are using AI to get to you. Let's see, there's one more. one more question in the chat I'll answer. And if you have any last minute questions, we have about 5 minutes. So if you have any last minute questions, let me know. Um, let's see. Christian apologetics writing defending beliefs that differ from today's societal lifestyles seem to be hard to market. Any suggestions for emerging Christian writers? They are hard to market because of the current social climate, I think is what it is. I think with anything, when you're writing something that is number one niche or either has a small audience or it's niche or it's something that not everyone's going to read. So, for example, Christian fiction is a lot easier to market. There's a lot of people interested in Christian fiction. But if it is writing defending beliefs, that is more of a nonfiction, which has a specific niche anyway. And then you're going more into that with Christian nonfiction and going into societal lifestyles. So you have to look at the size of your market with anything. You're more likely to sell a romance book because there's a lot of people reading romance. Romance is one of the top earners in publishing. If you're writing I had a guy writing about film, just film, certain nonfiction stuff with film. It's harder to sell because there are fewer people, generally speaking, who are interested in the history of film than people reading romance. So those are one of the things we have to look at is with anything that we're writing. It doesn't mean there's not a market, but you really have to look at the size of the market and also the saturation. If the market for romance is this big, and there's, this many writers, then there's a lot of opportunity. If there is a genre that is this big and there are this many writers, there's not a lot of opportunity. So that's one of the things to consider. And the last question that we had, one more question was that someone, it might have been me actually, although someone else may have said it as well, but someone said, unless you write in series or in a specific nonfiction niche, it can be very hard to make your money back on Amazon ads. And can I speak to that? Yes, I can, and it's true. Think about ads and think about how many people are running ads, whether it be Facebook, Amazon, anything like that. Um, the thing is that it costs money to run those ads to sell a book. And when there's a lot of competition, like in general fiction, mystery, romance, when there's a lot of competition, you're probably paying more um, to the market to get that reader on board. And so in those where you're paying more in the romance, mystery, really big categories, you've got more competition and not only competition for books they could read, but more competition in the ad market. So you're probably paying more per sale. You're paying more to get that consumer, that customer on board. And if you only have one book to sell, it's hard to even just break even. But if you have a series to where, okay, they read this book and I didn't break even. On book 2, I break even. On book 3, if they're still reading through the series, I make money. On book 4, I make money. 5, I make money. That is where it's easiest to make money on books in publishing. It's why publishers, by the way, have multiple imprints, and those imprints very specifically focus on one genre, or maybe a couple, but they're really focused in on genre. The reason why is they're building their list because they know that once they get a reader, how many things can they sell to that reader because they're going to spend money to get the reader. How many things can they sell them, and how many things do they need to sell them before they make a profit? And the same thing is for you as the author. If you have one book, if you have one thriller and that's it in your marketing, you will very likely not break even on your sales. I mean, if you're doing a lot of organic marketing events, things like that, but if you're running ads, it's going to be really hard to even break even on what you're spending versus what you're making in royalties. Book publishing doesn't have huge margins. It's not based on a couple sales. Money in publishing is based on quantity of sales and also how many products or backlist books that you have. So it is much harder to make money on a single product. And then the nonfiction piece, the thing is that nonfiction, very often, if you have a very specific niche, a very specific topic, there's probably going to be less competition, which means you're paying for less for ads. People are specifically searching you out when they want to know about that topic. So it is a smaller market, but less competition. So once you find what works, how to find your audience, you're more likely to get them at a lower cost and make profit on your book. And also, a lot of nonfiction books are priced higher. And by the way, nonfiction authors like that usually will also monetize on speaking. They're doing consulting, they are doing courses, and they're making money that way. A lot of times, their book is their lead magnet, and they're making money after that. So that's why it is true. It is easier to make money on books and through ads when you have a series or you have multiple books that are in the same genre. That's why I'll say genre hopping as an author is very hard to make money on if you, especially if you're self-published. But even trad published, it can be very hard. It's why a lot of those will use pen names. Um, and having a specific non-fiction niche is easier to make money on because, again, the market may be smaller, but the competition is smaller. And usually, especially with prescriptive how to, or, like very focused topics, people have a problem and you have the solution. So they're seeking you out to solve their problem. So if you've got a really good niche or a really good topic, then it's easier for you to sell there. So it's definitely one of those things that I would say it is true. All right. I think that's all we've got for today. I don't see any more questions in. Thank you all for being here. It's been a fun week. Good questions. I'll be back next week, same time, same place. If you've got questions you think of through the week, feel free to just email them in info@newshelves.com. I save them up and answer them on Fridays. And of course, you're always welcome to join us again live. I'll see you next Friday, same time, same place. Bye, guys.